Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Dynamic Diecasters, where this week we're going to continue our build legendary kit car from the show Knight Rider, with this one being issues or stages 7 through 10. And when we come back, we'll go ahead and get started on stage 7.
A shadowy flight into the dangerous world of a man who does not exist.
Welcome back. Like I said before the break, we would be starting on stage 7. But first, I wanted to actually point out in this box, we actually received, I believe, the first of many gifts. These being the posters that they promised. One issue is, as you can tell on the camera, they put them in a little box. The parts came in, so the posters are a fairly nice size, but they came bent. So that's what we're noticing now. But the pictures are actually fairly nice. I'll show them on camera. That way you guys see them. If I can figure that out. But since they're bent. But the first one is the three main stars of the cast in front of the car, as you can see there. And then I think there were 3 of them that they said we would be receiving. And then another one is KITT car with a nice sunset behind them. And then the last one, it looks like David Hasselhoff or Michael Knight, where it says "Nice KITT." So it might be a poster or promotional material from when the show was on. But those are the 3 posters. I don't know if I'll do anything with them, but they were a gift nonetheless. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started on issue 7 or stage 7. I think most of the build today is going to be related to the suspension. So we'll continue what we started in, I believe, stage 6. So in stage 7, we received the parts for the steering gearbox. We'll fix the gearbox onto the front left chassis beam and mount the upper suspension control arm on the left side of the front axle crossmember. So with that, we'll go ahead and go through the parts, and then we'll get started on the build. I think I have these in order. Yeah, so of course it's going to make a lot more noise. I'm actually using my earpods to record the audio today, so it might pick up stuff that I'm not accustomed to it picking up, or at least louder than normal. The first part is going to be the front left chassis beam. I think before we might have gotten the right chassis beam in one of the previous stages. I think I have got it over there, but let me get the rest of these out and then go over them. There's a few screws and then a couple of parts. So far in this build, each stage hasn't had a lot of parts in it, so the overall build time hasn't been crazy. In comparison, if you guys have watched my Star Trek Enterprise builds, there's a lot of little, well, you know, with the windows where you have to put in each individual window. So some panels may have 20, 30 panels in them. This, you know, like in this part, there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 parts in this stage. So in comparison, there's less parts in this than there's windows on that build. So the second part is the steering column. The third part is the steering gearbox top, which might be one of these little ones. It's hard to tell on the picture. These are all screws. It's got to be, might be these little ones. No, it's actually probably these. Yeah. So this is the steering. See, like the scale in the picture on the magazine, it doesn't look this big, but this is the steering gearbox top, and then this is the steering gearbox bottom, and then we've got two steering cross joints, which are these little pieces that I thought might have been the part I was looking at, but they're very tiny. And then we've got the steering gear one, which is this piece right here, and then the steering gear two, which is this part right here. And lastly, we've got the front left suspension upper control arm. If you remember from stage 6, I believe it was, we did the other side. Last thing we've got is, we've got two EM screws. We've got, or actually, it doesn't say two, it just says it's 2 by 4 millimeter. So it's 2 millimeters. So there's 5 of them in here, but there's probably a spare. Then we've got GM screws, and there's more of those in here. And then IM screws, and then lastly, MM screws. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started on stage 7, and when we come back from the time lapse, I'll show you what we did. See you in about 15 to 30 seconds. That was it for stage 7. It actually took us a little bit longer than I thought it would. I had struggling with the little tiny screws for this part, but so what we did was we attached the steering column to the steering gear right here, and then attached the steering gear to the left chassis. That was the first part of the stage that we worked on. And the other part was, if you remember from stage 6, we did, I believe, this side, and in this stage we put in the left one. So that's all we did for stage 7. Now we'll go ahead and move on to stage 8. It's going to be continuing of the chassis, so, or the suspension, I mean. So for in this one, we will finish assembling the front left suspension and fix the wheel on the front axle. So if you remember the wheel, I think it was stage 2 or 3, maybe it was 4. I don't remember. But we'll attach that wheel that we assembled to the left suspension, and then we'll add the front left chassis beam to the assembly. So with that, we'll go ahead and go through the parts, and then I'll start the build. Again, not a lot of parts, but little tiny ones. So if you've heard me complain other builds, I have kind of, I call them sausage fingers. So I have a hard time dealing with little tiny things sometimes in terms of like manipulating them with these fingers, but I'm getting through it, so that's a good thing. Okay. With that, the first part is the front left suspension lower control arm. This is almost kind of mimicking the DeLorean build. Not as much the Ecto 1. I don't think we dealt a lot with suspension on that one, but I think we did, but I don't recall. It was a while ago. Then we've got the front left suspension spring. Then we've got the front left suspension, or front suspension lower joint and the upper joint. So the lower joint is the square piece right here, and the lower joint is this one. Actually, it's this one. This piece is the front left shock absorber body. So actually, I was right. This was the upper joint, and then this is the shock absorber. I know it didn't look right. Then we got the front left reinforcement and the front right reinforcement. Then we got the front left suspension mount and the front right suspension mount. And then lastly, we've got screws. So we've got GM screws, more screws than I expected. GM screws, then we've got IM screws, then we've got JM screws and KM screws. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. In about 30 seconds, you'll see what we did. See you then. So that was it for stage 8. So yeah, as you can see, we attached the wheel from, it was actually issue 3 or stage 3 to the crossbar, and then we added in the suspension here and attached it here, and then we took that chassis piece and attached it to the cross member that from the previous stages. We also mounted a couple other pieces. So that's where we're sitting currently through stage 8. Moving on to stage 9, it's going to be more of the same. So in stage 9, we'll mount the right front suspension, fix the knuckle, and prepare the brake disc for the right front wheel. We'll also join the front right chassis beam to the front axle. So essentially what we're going to do, you'll see, but this is the left chassis beam. We're going to attach the right one from, which is this one right here. We're going to attach it to the axle. So with that being said, we'll go through the parts for stage 9 and then we'll get moving on it. Today's build has taken me a lot longer than I thought it was going to. And this will take me a while too, because this is basically a repeat of stage 7 or 8. Adding in the brake disc portion of it. So it'll probably take me, even though I learned from stuff in the last stage, but the issue I have is just all these little, again, screws. I'm having difficulty. And if you watch, you'll probably be able to pick it up on the time lapse, the issues I was having. When you've got little screws that go into little holes, but you got to hold little parts that go into said little holes, it doesn't add up to fun times. At least for me. But yeah, these are exactly the same almost parts that we just did in stage 8. So first part is the front right suspension lower control arm. So as you saw in this one, this was the lower control arm, that the left one that we did in stage 8. And then we've got another spring. Then we've got the front right suspension lower joint and the upper joint, just like in the last stage. So they look exactly the same. Those were the two parts that I had the biggest issue with in the last one. Then we've got the brake caliper mount, which is this one right here, and dust shield. Then brake disc 1, it's called, is this piece, and then brake disc 2. Then we've got the right steering knuckle, which you couldn't see it, but it's attached to the wheel um, for the left one. So that's interesting. We don't have the wheel though, so I guess this will just go attached to the brake pieces. Then we've got a front right shock absorber body. Then we've got the brake caliper. Then lastly, we've got screws. So we've got BP screws, which means they go into plastic. Then all the rest are metal, we go into metal. So we've got GM screws, we've got IM screws, JM screws, and KM screws. With that, we'll go ahead and get started, and probably about 30 to 45 seconds, you'll see what we did. See you in a few. And that's it for stage 8. Actually, that did not take no way near what stage 8 did. So, I mean, we did have to put a tire on, but we did basically attach everything else that we did on this stage, except for the steering column part. But we attached everything else. So this is the left suspension, or the right suspension. This was the left. So basically, this entire section is what we worked on in stage 9. And then the other piece, we started the brake piece. So this is the disc that we put together. We're not doing anything with it yet. And then the caliper and the outer portion. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and move on to stage 10 and the final stage for this episode. Not sure what this one is, but it looks like it's going to be the tie rods and the arms of the steering system, the anti-roll bar, and the front brake line. So there aren't that many parts. It looks like there's a pair of tweezers in here though. But we'll go through the parts and then we'll complete the build and conclude the episode for today. There are a bunch of little parts though, so who knows? I may be like, but it looks like they're attachment parts for the roll bars or whatever, so we're probably not done with the chassis for today yet. All these little compartments. In future episodes, I might actually like unbag these beforehand. That way it's a lot less on the viewer for this stuff. Alright, I think that's it. So, the first part we're going to talk about that's in this little container right here is all the tie rod pieces. Oops. So, the first part will be the steering left tie rod, which I don't know. Looks like they're both the same, just opposite. So I'm going to assume, I mean, they're probably interchangeable because you flip them one way. So anyways, steering left tie rod. Then we've got the steering center link. Then we've got the steering right tie rod. Then we've got the steering pitman arm, which is the one with the L stamped on it. And then the steering idler arm, which has got the R stamped on it. These might have R's stamped on it. I just can't see it because they might be tiny. But, oh no, it's right there. So this one's the left one, and this one's the right one. So there's that. And then we've got the front anti-roll bar. Then we've got the front anti-roll bar links. There's two of them, which are these little tiny parts right here. Then we've got the left, right, front, wait, the front brake distributor, which is this little plastic piece here. Then we've got the left and right front brake line, which it looks like it's the smaller of the, there's two small ones and then a longer one. So it looks like these are the front and right, left and right front brake lines. And then this is the front brake line. That's interesting. Then, like I said, they gave us a pair of tweezers. These tweezers, I got a pair like this before. They don't work real well because they're like blunt at the end. They're not like pointy. So I haven't found that these work real well. As you see, I have another pair right here for another one of the builds that I have done. And then we've got front anti-roll bar U-clamps, two of them. And then lastly, we've got screws. So we've got BP screws, then we've got DM screws, GM screws, and LM screws. A bunch of GM screws. So anyhow, we'll go ahead and get started on this, and then in about 30 to 45 seconds, I'll show you what we did, and then we'll conclude this episode. See you in about 30 to 45 seconds. And that's it for stage 10. This was crazy. Today's build was just a pain. Everything was just ugh. Anyhow, in stage 10, we attached the distributor, brake distributor, to the cross member, and we also attached the brake lines. We ran the left brake line to the brake caliper on the wheel, and then we just routed the wires for the other two lines because obviously the wheels aren't there yet. But the other thing we did was we attached the steering tie rods and the anti-roll bar here. So all of these were very little screws, so we had to do all of this stuff down in here, and it was just a pain. You could probably, if you just look at the time lapse, you can see what type of a pain in the ass I was having in regards to that piece. But this is where we're sitting currently. Um, but that's pretty much it for this episode for Knight Rider. The next episode we'll be doing for Dynamic Diecasters will be the Titanic build. So you'll see that next week. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I didn't enjoy filming this one. I had a lot of issues today, more than I normally do. But I'm still enjoying the build. It'll be interesting because there's a lot of detail under the hood already that I don't even recall with the Ghostbusters or even the DeLorean build that I've done so far. Um, so, but if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel already, I know we've got 3,500 subscribers now. So thank you for everyone who's subscribed already. But if you haven't and you would like to, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and hit that bell so you get notified uh, when new videos come out. But for all of us at the Heart of Geek, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.